It's podcast day. It's podcast day. Welcome in, friends. Welcome back to the heyBrownBerry YouTube channel. My name is Marce, and it's my pleasure to have you here. Thanks for taking a moment to come and hang out in my little community. I like to call this my corner of the internet. Today's one of those days where I really just wanted to sit down and chat with you. So I am. If you have visited my podcast corner before, I don't tend to have structured format podcasts anymore. And right off the bat, I'm going to ask to hear from you because I like doing that too. And that's part of the reason I come here. I often explain that my podcasts are not structured and that I don't tend to do the same types of segments or topics, and I don't always have themes. Sometimes I have an idea that kind of stretches out across the different episodes. But I'm curious what you like or don't like in the podcast that you view. Do you like when the podcaster, the creator, tends to have kind of a repeating model in their episodes, and so you can anticipate that each time you visit with them you're going to hear about updates on a specific thing, or that they're very likely to discuss one thing or another? Do you like that kind of predictable type of structure? Sometimes predictability can be very comforting. Or do you prefer something that is more ad hoc and looser? Do you prefer just to find that person and see what they're up to? What do you think? It's not likely that I'm going to change and start doing one and not the other. I'm just very curious because I find myself saying what type of podcast this is, and I think it's because some of the podcasts I watch are different from mine. In many cases, that's why I watch them. So I'm just wondering if you'd share with me in the comments what sort of format you like. Me and my coffee again. I was away this past weekend, which I'll share a little bit more with you about. I was visiting my dearest Maria. She actually has the Ninja Chickens YouTube channel out here on YouTube. It's convenient that her YouTube channel is on YouTube.
Be a nice way to bring here.
So I'm here enjoying my coffee, and already I'm remembering about some conversations that I had with her.
Yeah, because you look very pretty and your hair is just stunnery. Right. Okay. I need raspberries today.
Maria is one of my favorite people to talk to, and often when I share things with her, whatever it is I've shared with her, she expands it in a beautiful way. She has this very natural curiosity, and she has a mind for details and a memory for details. And she's also always willing to just dive that little bit deeper into a topic. And when she shares it with you, it just feels very rich. And I was reading an article about coffee because I tend to drink it every day. And in the article, it mentioned that it was proposed that it's not a good idea to drink coffee first thing in the morning and on an empty stomach. And that caught my eye because that's exactly what I do. I tend to drink my coffee when it's still the quiet morning hours, often when it's still dark because I wake up pretty early. And I drink it on an empty stomach because it's really just one of the first things that I do. And I don't often cook breakfast and eat a bunch first. And it's a ritual that I've had for the past couple of years. And it was one of the repeatable things that I look forward to in a day. So I shared with her that I was reading this article, and the reason that it caught my eye is because that's totally my habit, and the article was suggesting that that can actually throw off some hormone levels in the body. Now, because this is a public forum, I am going to be very cautious about things that I say, about what I read, and the effect of certain things on the body, because it's not for me to prescribe things or suggest things to other people. And the point of me telling you this is that when I shared it with Maria and shared some of the reasons listed in the article that it might be better not to do that with coffee, again, her natural curiosity and her access to resources, because she's a very good researcher, had us down the rabbit hole of another article that was talking about the effect of different levels of caffeine in the body and what types of hormones it might impact, and just more information, just a richer explanation of things. So even as I'm drinking my coffee right now, later in the day than I usually would, and after I've had some breakfast, it's allowing me to think back to some chats with her. I can talk about that visit right now because I don't do formatting. I don't do segments. Maria is my best friend, and she lives in North Carolina. I live in South Florida. She also used to live in South Florida, and that's just one of the things that we have discovered in our 4+ years of friendship that we have in common. And I went to visit her, really feeling very grateful for the opportunity to get on a plane and go spend time with her. The pandemic has meant that we both spent a lot of time at home. We have mainly connected, through our phones. And the beginnings of our friendship were also online and kind of text-based, the very beginnings. And we met because of common interests that we were able to share through Instagram. But once we met in person and got to hang out together and cook together and walk together and visit places together, which we've done a lot of in the 4 years we've known each other, that became, part of the depth of our friendship. Because in those moments when you're sitting together and doing something or not is when you really often get to know a person. And so I'm feeling super lucky to have done that now. And not having access to that for a time has given me a deep appreciation for it. Where she lives, the temperature is definitely cooler than where I live. I would say that on the days I was with her, our temperatures range between 80 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And theirs had shifted. And the fall cool air is coming. And it was ranging between 50 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So a big difference for me, a welcome difference for me. I was able to wear some of my woolly wear, my handmade knits, and it feels like autumn is definitely going to kiss the mountain that she lives on pretty quickly. When I came back home, I was hoping for some reason that maybe I would find a little bit cooler air here as well. It's not time yet. Not time yet for South Florida. We wait patiently with great anticipation. We had a great time there. I'm sharing with you now, by way of some video and photos, what I was able to see and experience right there on the Dandelion Homestead. I have learned so much about how to appreciate land and space through Maria's eyes, and the things that we can do, the small and large things that we can do to contribute, give back to the land, and to show our appreciation for it. So it was really nice that I could spend some time with her. We are both just enamored with nature's giving beauty. And because the environment there is so different, of course, the landscape to me is completely, I don't know, it's amazing. And I'm glad to have spent some time in that air. Speaking of cool air, one of the things I've been wanting to share with you is I am on course to probably change where I live in the next few years. Many of you, according to what I know about those who watch, are probably at an age or at a point in life where you've moved maybe at least once. Maybe not. Maybe you still live in your childhood home. But many of you are probably at a point where you have seen different spaces, lived in different spaces. And my husband Andrew and I have been talking about our next move. The house where we live now is the second one we've lived in together. And we built this house on this land because we wanted the space and we wanted the type of environment that allows you the space to build and to plant, and for our kids to be able to have the outdoors as a part of their life. And as we have been here for almost a couple of decades now, and as our kids have gone off to college and they're starting to make their own plans about what's next, we're thinking about where we want to live very differently than when we first did, which is probably pretty common. Maybe you get together with a companion, or maybe you leave home, or maybe you finish school. Some milestone event can often accompany a desire for a change of scenery. And for us, you know, a lot has happened in the last 2 years, 3 years. A lot has happened politically and environmentally and socially. A lot has happened for me creatively. A lot has happened for our children in terms of their maturity and the ability to make plans about their futures. So those things are a total catalyst for wanting to see what's next for all of us. And when we talk about moving from here, our conversations now often turn to what are the main things that we're looking for in our next place. If you're not familiar with Florida, the state of Florida, which is the southernmost state, southeasternmost state, it's quite a tropical environment in terms of the weather. We don't have snow, or we don't tend to have as many areas that have deciduous trees that have leaves that change color. We do have some. We have oaks and other tree types that change color in the fall, and so we don't have a distinct mark of seasons beyond temperature changes. It's not always hot. I know that I tend to talk about the heat quite a bit when it is hot, but in November, December, right through February and March, we tend to have cooler temperatures, so somewhere in the range of 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit becomes a little more common, especially in the evening and at nighttime. But for the most part, there's a lot of sun. During the summer months and early autumn months, there's a lot of heavy rains. We are always at risk of being touched by a hurricane between June and November. But there are bright days, very hot days, and high humidity. So one of the things we talk about in looking for our next place is either to find a more temperate environment. Drew and I are both from Jamaica. We're both born in Jamaica. So we are used to these tropical temperatures. But we also grew up in a place that had mountains, stunning mountains, and homes that, were very close to the coast. So both of those things can make the weather much more temperate and offer a bit of relief from midday heat. And so the list of things that we'd like in the next place has weather and seasons and the environment and space right at the top. What are the days going to be like? And part of that is that we're finding that as a couple, we are spending more time, the two of us now. Our children are away at university doing what they need to do, and that gives us time to reconnect and spend with each other. So we like doing that outside. We like walking, being on the water or by the water, hiking, trails that we have visited in our travels. We both love to travel. Have shown us that we like to do outdoor activities, at least for some part of a day. It's nice to have that option. So the kind of weather that allows you to do that, throughout the year and in different ways is on our list. And snow wouldn't necessarily keep us from those things. There's blissful things you can do in cold weather. But I think we're pretty well spoiled right now in having a number of warm months, but maybe not so hot. And then we are thinking about our neighbors. We're already thinking about who will our future neighbors be. Are there people that we want to open our doors to and go out and see and meet and get to know? Because that's part of living in a place as well. And what I mean by that is right now we live in a place that's fairly remote. We are pretty, we know our neighbors pretty well, and we're pretty fortunate that we're not so remote as to feel isolated. There's plenty out here that reminds you that you're in a populated place. And so I don't know if we would permanently move to another place that has us miles and miles from the next house. I'm not sure we would do that. But certainly, are there activities and events that have a community feel? And are there places that we would go and maybe even get to know people as our neighbors? That's on the list too. So maybe at some point, as I get more clarity, I'll share some of the places we're thinking about, and I'll definitely share more about things that we would like to have in the next place we live, because it's just a reflection point that I have now. It's a stage I'm in of thinking through that, and I never mind sharing that with you. And if you've been through that or you're in it right now, because post-pandemic, why do I keep saying post-pandemic? We are still in the pandemic. But as a pandemic byproduct, maybe you're thinking of making some changes, and you're always welcome to share that here as much as you'd like. Since seasons and weather and environment and the access to outdoor activities are on the list, that connects to another thing I've been reflecting about. So when we move, putting that out there into the universe, when we move and we want to spend more time outdoors, we want to do that from a space, a physical space, the place that we live in, that is minimalist in its nature. We'd like to live in a smaller space, most likely. It's a privilege to be able to say, I want to downsize. I feel that. I feel that I am grateful that I can choose to live in a smaller space and to have less stuff. And I do choose that. So this move could be 2 to 3 years away, but I am already in a mindset of moving things on from here, from this house. The last time we moved, when we built this house, I was 9 months pregnant. My youngest daughter was born 7 days after we first brought a piece of furniture into this house. Packing up one house at 8 and 9 months pregnant and moving into another house near full term, That was a lot. It was a lot. It was emotional in so many ways, and even now I remember the feelings of overwhelm. Just looking at stuff. Where is the stuff going to go? How to pack up and organize stuff, and what to keep, what to leave. So I'm in a process now of thinking about that move as though it's going to happen in a month. Not in a stressful way, but more as a motivator for what do I want to have around me when I am in a smaller space that is really about being comfortable, feeling nurtured, feeling close to what's inside and outside my house. What do I want that new space to look like? And that has me really, really reflecting on what do I need around me at any given time. I know more now about what I love in my crafting, and that means certain tools and other making related things. I think I will always want those with me, or I will want access to them. But things that I've already made and things that I already have, what is necessary, what will stay. And one of the categories of things will be my handmaids, the things that I've already made and would have to consider packing up to go with me to another space. I'm going to share with you one of those categories now. Are you a shawl knitter or crocheter? Do you weave shawls? Where are you on the subject of handmade shawls? Where I am is that they are one of the things I enjoy making. I'm thinking, have I crocheted? I'm pretty sure I've crocheted at least one shawl, maybe more, but I mostly have knit shawls, and some of them are right here next to me. I'm going to show you some of them. And this particular grouping of handmade items is one that connects to all of those things I just shared with you. So when I move to another place and the weather is not always so hot, I will gladly be wearing my hand knit shawls much more often. Probably throw one on in the morning and keep it on most of the day is what I imagine. And so I'm thinking about the ones that I already made and which will go, which will stay. And I don't know if I'm going to make that decision right now on camera, but I just wanted to share some of the ones I've made with you, because as I was thinking about that, I also realized that I like to make shawls because of the type of project they are in hand. For the most part, shawls are a really great canvas for getting to know yarn. The yarn is moving through your hands for a good period of time for most shawl projects. And so you really get to sit with it for a while. But they also have this wonderful characteristic that they can be very mindful or mindless, depending on what you're looking for. Shawls will hold complex stitches for you if that's what you're into. And the type of shapes you can make is vast. The choices and options just for shawl shapes is vast. And with the patterns that are out there, if what you want is mindful, repetitive stitching, a ritual that you can return to in a project, shawls can give you that. And then they can be of use multiple times during the year, depending on where you live and depending on what you use to make them, depending on the type of yarn, whether it's something light and cool, maybe a plant-based yarn, or something more dense and woolly to really help you survive a cold wind. And so I love them for that. I love them for how they are in hand, and I love them for what they are on the body. And that's evident in the number of them that I own, that I've made. And I even have, sorry, I didn't mean to shake the camera there. I even have at least one or two that have been made for me. So I wanted to share some of those shawl stories with you. And I was thinking about where I was when I made some of these and where where they've been with me. I was thinking about where I was mentally, emotionally when I was doing any of these projects. I was reflecting on how they came to be. Why did I choose this particular project? I feel like those are fun things to share in community. I'm grabbing some beeswax. I have a little beeswax candle here. Is that weird? You'll notice when I do these random things sometimes that I do not bother to edit them out because I don't want to give the impression that all of this is some perfect environment that I create and curate for you. We're just hanging out. And in my craft room, sometimes I need to reach for things. Like my Tuft Woollens luxury lip balm. Which feels like luxury right now. Little sheepy. Super cute. Shawls and shawl stories and shawl projects. Some of the wool with halo is now sticking to me. Since I was just with Maria and I decided I would just grab a few to talk to you about them, this one ended up in the pile that I grabbed. And because I don't want to spend a lot of time not sharing this, if I don't remember the name of the project, I'm just going to put it on screen and I'll leave it there for a while. So if you are not looking at the screen, I will say, I will say you can look at the screen and see the name here, just so if you're interested, you can look it up. And of course, I will include the name and pattern designer in the description box below the video. So this one is one that is connected to Maria. I'm going to show you some video of it. The shape of this one is unique. It's really a very broad tube. And it had a very interesting construction. And it's got 2 different colors of yarn in it. These were both dyed by Maria. And the story behind this is that when Maria and I traveled together to the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, we thought it would be really cool to have a project that we were both working on. And we wanted it to be one that was fairly simple to knit. This one is all garter stitch. You're knitting and not purling. And the construction of it is really cool. And since we traveled together, we stayed together and experienced that festival together, we thought, wouldn't it be a nice commemorative project to have this shawl, to both have the same one? And it was extra special for me because the yarn is dyed by Maria. And because it's a long tube, it stretches out, and when you double it, it makes a cozy cowl kind of fit. So as I said, I'm not going to say which of these that I think are going to stay or go. It's really about the story behind them. I can picture us at the Edinburgh Yarn Festival sitting in a circle together with some folks we knew and some who we had just met by way of being in Scotland for the festival. And there was an event for podcasters, I believe it was, where we were just given an opportunity to sit together and get to know each other. And when you create content and put it out into the world, and then you go to a festival and meet other people, it's incredible how much there is that element of, I know you. Hey, I know you. I've learned a lot of things about you through your channel. And that familiarity was definitely felt in that room. And then there's also an appreciation for, hey, you understand some of what I do and what it takes to turn that camera on. So the discussion just allowed us all to kind of drop our shoulders and get to know each other. Just be fans, be fans of others and tell them what we appreciate about their work. And I picture Maria and I working on these shawls during that trip. When we were at the festival and had time to sit and stitch, and when we were back in our rental and the two of us were recapping the day and just really peacefully working through it. Another part of that trip was shopping for yarn for what has definitely become my most worn shawl. And this is my Fleece Flight. And this pattern is by Maria. The Fleece Flight is called that because it's meant to be a sampling of wool that creates this beautiful multi-paneled shawl, a wrap really. And while we were at the festival, Maria allowed me to wear hers on one of the days that we were walking, and I felt like I really needed another layer. She very kindly offered me hers. And after wearing it for a while, put mine on now, I started to realize that I really love a wrap style shawl. This one is long. It's pointy on both ends, but it's very broad in the middle. And after wearing hers and feeling how useful it was, hanging over my coat and keeping some warm air in, wrapping it around my head and neck and shoulders at the same time, being able to keep it on me just as a very comforting piece, I had to have one. I had to have my own. And during the festival, we shopped for the different yarns that you see here. And because I had the pattern designer with me, I had VIP access to what kind of yarns I might want to use. And it made for the best project knit. It gave me an instant memory piece from a really, really good trip. And it introduced me to sheet breeds and yarn bases that I'd never tried before, which is the whole point of a Fleece Flight. It's kind of a play on a beer flight or another type of sampling where you just get a little bit of a few different things. So there's no question this one will go with me. This one will stay throughout the move. I've now worn it to so many different places and I've traveled with it. And it is the best type of multi-coverage shawl. I love different shawl shapes, but this one does the shoulder, neck, and sometimes head coverage that I love if I'm really trying to be warm. I have designed primarily sock patterns, but I have two other patterns, a shawl pattern and a hat pattern. And the shawl pattern is called Ritual Shawl, and you will have seen it if you visited with me before. And if you haven't, check out my Etsy shop or my Ravelry page for the Ritual Shawl. My third version of this shawl here, I knit this at a heavier weight than the original. The original was a DK weight, and I knit another version which has come out to a worsted weight. It's made in some John Arbon yarns. And by the time I came around to making this for myself again, I had been able to learn so much about what I love in a good yarn, what feels good through my fingers. John Arbon yarns are right up there. This one has some Yarnadelic and Devonia yarns in it. If I remember, I will put in a link to the episode where I talked a lot more about this one. And really that is the story behind this shawl. I created the pattern to invite the knitter to sink into a ritual of making. It is a very simple knit, and each time I've made one for myself, I've made it at a time where I needed something to call me back in to settling down and slowing down. And because I made this one in a worsted weight, it is the wearable blanket size of my dreams. It's a triangular shawl shape, and it has a fairly good wingspan on it. But mostly what I love is how cozy this middle section is. When I wear it in this sort of bandana style, it just envelops my neck and chest in a way that I adore. And it was a reminder that even when one shawl style or shape may not fit you exactly as written, you know, maybe a DK weight, a lighter weight would be perfect for the temperature or for what you're going for. Making this in a heavier weight yarn just made it feel like a completely different shawl for me. It does not cover my arms when I wear it bandana style like this. But because it's much larger in this weight, if I want some shoulder coverage, I'm good. And it goes pretty far down my back as well. I love this ritual shawl. The intent was for it to be something simple with a little splash. It's just a small splash of color and texture. And I'm proud of the fact that I branched out of sock knitting just a little bit, out of sock design just a little bit. This yarn has a really nice halo, and I'm discovering that I don't really have any problem with that. A yarn that may be a mohair blend or naturally has its own halo, I'm very fortunate. It doesn't tend to be prickly on my skin, and that just opens up more breeds and blends that I can use. This was good proof of that. So it's not cool here, but I actually love putting these on. I just like the way they feel against my skin, and I already feel that they're recalling some of those memories of either their timing or place, which was the point of this reflection. A lighter weight version of something that I think is a representation of soulful stash for me. When I talk about soulful stash, I'm talking about yarns that call to mind something very significant or sentimental for me. It's something that I have some connection to that yarn in some way, or it's soulful because where I sourced it, or where it comes from, or how it was produced is very meaningful. This shawl, which is the Slumber shawl pattern, made from yarn that I spun, is one of those. This is made from blends of Shetland, Ramie, and silk, fibers that are produced by Anne Choi of Middlebrook Fiber Works. And the story of this shawl is Anne Choi and she's one of my dearest friends. She is my business partner. We run a Black and Indigenous people of color retreat together. I've been to Anne's farm. I've pet these sheep. I treasure the fact that wool is what brought Anne into my life, and I challenge myself to spin her fiber into yarn to make this shawl in a way that would be meaningful and lasting. And as part of it, I tried some different spinning techniques. Within these sections, I practiced some long draw spinning. I did some chain plying. I just tried to work the fiber in a way that felt like it would exhibit to its best. And the Ramie and silk content gives it beautiful drape. And Shetland yarn, or Shetland fiber being Shetland fiber, all of these colors are just natural undyed representations from the sheep. That to me is incredible, because this feels colorful in a beautiful way. These neutral shades, these natural tones. Yeah, I loved everything about this project. It's the Slumber shawl by Stephen West. It has just enough texture and enough interest for my brain where you change the stitch patterning to be a welcome addition to my making life. And it's very light, so this is a great transitional piece, but it's very warm. And practicing long draw spinning to get that woolen effect, it was very pleasing. It was just opening up another door in my spinning journey, so that when I want something that still gives warmth but the fabric is not heavy, now I know how to do that. And I love that. Speaking of Stephen West, I found a blast from the past. Before Stephen West was as well known as he is now, before I'd ever met him or really, really knew of him as someone who, really would make such a splash in the knitting world, I found this shawl pattern when I was very new to knitting. This is the Boneyard shawl. If I show you up close, it's a pretty simple stockinette. There are a few purl ridges in there to give some texture, and then there's a garter stitch border. This was my first time learning about this triangular shawl shaping and seeing the effect of yarn overs to increase length and width, and having an appreciation for the simplicity of stockinette stitch. I'd have to look, but this is many years old, let's just say that. And I've never thought to give it away or remove it from my shawl pile, even though since the time that I made this, I have come to appreciate a much bigger shawl real estate. If the others I just showed you are any indication, this is on the smaller end for me, more of a shawlette by comparison. And even though, I would wear it now more as a cowl than anything, not to give me a lot of warmth, I still have such a sentimental connection to it being one of the first times that I branched out into another type of knitting project and felt the accomplishment of making something that looks like the picture. That was very satisfying, to the point that every time I put my hand on this now, I feel like I don't know that I would give this away. I still might, in favor of minimalism. But I love that it brings to mind a moment of breaking through into a next step in my knitting journey. So, and it's useful. It's still very purposeful. And in fact, having learned more about shawl knitting, I have gone back to this format of a simple triangle that just expands by width and by length with a bit of texture in it. You can see that represented in the ritual shawl that I designed. I really have an appreciation for the simplicity of that, and the fact that you could, if you've got some yarn you want to use up, you could just keep going on a Boneyard shawl and use it up. You could do all kinds of great combinations. The coffee is now cold. I don't mind that at all, but it tells me that I've been talking for a while, and we are going to wrap this up here shortly. The last one that was in the pile, as I'm thinking about this now, it actually also represents a kind of a breaking through for me in my knitting. I was part of Helen Stewart's Shawl Society. Helen Stewart designs under the brand name Curious Handmade. And the Shawl Society was a collection of shawls that she released one at a time over a period of time, and you could knit through them. And it was a really clever way to introduce you to just how nice it is to change one element, whether the yarn or the technique, and make something completely different. And as the Shawl Society, it also just brought you together with other makers that were doing the same thing at the same time. So hat tip to Helen for that, because she's done a few of those types of design series, and I really enjoyed the one in which I participated. And the reason I think of this next one as kind of a breakthrough pattern is going to be maybe pretty clear here when I show it to you. Can you see that little sparkle? If you want to see the name of this shawl, you can look on the screen now. I'll put it on screen. It's just not coming to mind, but, and I made this quite a while back. This is made with an alpaca yarn, and I'll link to my project page for it if you'd like to see more details. But the breakthrough for me was to do this beading. Adding beads to my project seemed like a very mysterious and magical thing. And like many things that I haven't tried before, in my head it seemed hard. But it wasn't hard. It was just new. And Helen's pattern instructions are delightful. If you haven't knit one of her shawl or sock patterns, primarily her shawls are just written in a way that is very pleasing. She has a system of percentages and a very incremental way of writing her patterns that makes it really easy to know your progress, know where you are. And putting beads on was one of the options for this shawl. And I learned the technique. I used a crow hook. I learned the technique for beading. That was so much simpler than I thought it was going to be. And in fact, when it came time to adding the beads, I had already done so much kind of peaceful knitting. I welcomed that little splash, that little difference in technique. And the ruffled edging on this one and the lace that came right at the end. All of that was somewhat new to me and pleasing because of that. Because it's made in alpaca, I understand this better now as well. It is very drapey. And it's very light in weight, but it's got quite a halo. And it's super warm. What I love about this is that lightness and how squishy it is has had me do exactly what I'm doing now, which is to squish it up, shove it in a bag when I don't need it, and then pop it out, put it on when I'm stepping back outside or going back into the air-conditioned air indoors. And immediately that halo of warmth surrounds me. I love that about it. It's a different kind of portability to be able to scrunch something down and shove it in your bag. And I've made this years ago and it's held up so well. It doesn't really show wear. The halo that's on it is not like pilling that you'll get with some fiber. And the ability to travel with it and just grab it and take it when I need it has meant that it gets used a lot. And the beads just remind me that sometimes I can get brave and do a new thing. And I hope you have a project type like that too, that regardless of what the item is, that when you look at it, you think, I did that. I did that. I think that's so satisfying. My friends, I love these reflection moments with you. I have many more shawls in my stash of shawls, but it's been a pleasure to remember how these came to be and to share that. The process of what I will do with the ones that I don't intend to keep is one that I know is going to take time, and I think that's why I'm starting now, and I'm thinking of it as part of a moving experience, to give it priority and to put a box around it that says, when you're moving, you want to do that in the lightest way possible. So let's start thinking about little areas where you can process some stuff out of your space, rehome some things, send them off to be used and loved by others. And having this record right here in our little corner is really nice. Thanks for traveling down this memory lane with me. I hope that in your days to come, you find something here that reminds you of the joy in your making that's not just the finished item. I really appreciate the way you share, so keep doing that. Feel free to comment or ask questions below, and I will always make my best effort to be back in touch with you. Here's to a refill of your favorite beverage and more time together next time. Thanks for being here. I'll see you. Mwah.